Good morning, and welcome to the Brenda Perryman Show right here on TV 33, WHPR, Comcast 20 in Detroit. And boy, this is supposed to be a beautiful day. A little cold, but a beautiful day. Just a reminder, 2 weeks ago we had Mr. Ricky Welch from Silver Fox Furs here on the show, and we are having Mr. Welch is having a trunk show with sales on those beautiful, beautiful furs. And I will be performing from my newest book, Mood Swings and Magic Carpet Rides. And I will be doing a book signing. So if you want to attend, and we're having refreshments too, and it's absolutely free, and it's on the 17th of November at 3 p.m. at New Center 1. If you want to attend, please RSVP to Silver Fox Furs. And I will give you the number a little later because I left it over there. But once again, this is the Brenda Perryman Show, and this is the Friday after the election, and it is our tradition to talk about the election. And I have here one of my co-hosts and the esteemed political consultant and communications director and all of this stuff.
I love it. I'll send you the check.
Mr. Ken Coleman.
I'll send you the check in a few days. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing just fine, Ken. Just fine. And what if you had to say one word about the election? What would you say?
History making. History making, certainly in the sense that Detroit voters elected the first white mayor for the city of Detroit in 40 years. And so that was indeed a bit of history. But Mike Duggan is mayor-elect and will be the next mayor of the city of Detroit.
Wow. Yes, he will be. What about the turnout this week?
Yeah, turnout was 25%. And to sort of put that in perspective, Brenda, turnout for the last city general election in 2009 was 22%. And 4 years before that, in 2005, it was 37%. So 25% on Tuesday, which was 3 points higher than it was 4 years ago, but 12 points less than it was 8 years ago.
But it's still low.
Still very low. I mean, there is always a concern or a question as to whether the 500 and some odd registered voters in the city of Detroit are actually living people who live in the city. But even if you take 50,000 or 100,000 people out off the rolls, it's still less than 50% and still less than what I think a lot of us would want to see in terms of participation.
Right. I don't know what that mindset is. Yeah. I really don't.
Well, 135,000 people came out on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. That is enough to fill Ford Field a couple of times. It's enough to fill Joe Louis Arena maybe 7 times. It is certainly a lot of people, but there are a lot more people who didn't turn out. But I've always made the point, Brenda, that elections are what they are. And so whatever turnout is, those are the people that wanted to participate. I think some people make a conscious decision not to participate. They're voting that way too.
Right. Well, I would like to know the count of the absentee voters.
Yeah.
I would like to know that count.
Well, it was pretty much on par with what we normally see, Brenda. In Detroit, absentee votes are anywhere between 30 to 40% of the total tally. Mm-hmm. In Detroit, on Tuesday, 42,000 people came or voted by absentee. So 42,000 of the 135,000 votes were absentee votes, a little bit more than 30%.
Wow.
Yeah. So that, and another point on that, Brenda, too. I mean, we traditionally look at absentee votes as seasoned citizens who live in senior homes and the like. More and more, there are younger people who are opting to vote absentee. Maybe they're out of town that day. Maybe they're actually working on a poll that day.
Maybe they're away at college.
Maybe they're away at college. Right. I think when we talk about absentee votes, generally we're talking about senior citizens, but not always. Sometimes they're 30 or 40 or 50 somethings.
Oh, okay. Well, let's look at the results here, and we'll start with the mayoral results. Yeah. Oh, and before we begin, we'd like to send our deepest sympathies out to the family of retired Judge Willie Lipscomb, who passed away day before yesterday.
That's a tragedy.
Yes, it was.
Shocking.
He was very lively. I saw him at an event not that long ago.
I saw him on the campaign trail a couple of times this past summer. Of course, people will remember that Willie Lipscomb was a retired judge, but certainly was a candidate for mayor this summer.
Right, he was.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the mayoral election, Mike Duggan secured 55% of the vote, so he won 55-45 over Wayne County Sheriff Benny Napoleon. Now, that 10-point clip is smaller than what a lot of political experts and pollsters and media types had predicted. Many thought it might be a 20-point win or a 15-point win, but it turned out to be only a 10-point win for Mike Duggan. And to put that in perspective, it was only 14,000 votes difference between the two candidates, 14,000.
Don't you think that the Napoleon campaign had a bit of a push at the end?
I think it did. You know, I've been on this broadcast before. I certainly was on after the primary, and I described the Benny Napoleon campaign as anemic in the primary. I think that it did get some life. The blood did start flowing.
Well, it seemed like it started flowing more the last couple of weeks.
You generally see that in a campaign. Generally, a couple things that happen, and it certainly happened in this campaign, is that, you know, if a candidate is behind, they usually do step up their game, but they also do what's known in the business as go negative. And that means to try to define your candidate, attack your candidate on his or her, sort of negatives. And I think that not Napoleon's campaign in particular, but the super PAC that was supporting Benny Napoleon did get on air, did get on television, did get on radio with attack ads on Mike Duggan. I think that helped. The other point to make is, you know, even when Mike Duggan had a 20-point lead in polls, there was still a huge undecided out there. It was in double digits. And I think those undecideds probably skewed more toward Benny Napoleon in the end than Mike Duggan.
That was really interesting. But I think it just seemed momentum. Do you think the debate helped at all?
Well, I tend to think that debates normally don't unless there's a knockout punch, and I don't think that there was a knockout punch in their three debates, at least not in my view, and I didn't get the sense in talking to others who kind of follow this stuff for business, as a business. I don't think they saw a knockout punch. I think that the Napoleon team did get more energy down the stretch. He better defined himself. They didn't move away from Detroit is my home, not my hobby, but he did talk about the one square mile plan, the COP plan. I think that did resonate with people.
I think that should have probably come out earlier.
Well, my criticism about the Napoleon campaign is here's a man who's got nearly 40 years of law enforcement experience, and he doesn't introduce a COP plan until September the 10th. Well after the primary, and certainly only 8 weeks before the general. I don't know how you do that. Why would you do that? What a lot of political consultants will tell you is you kind of hold off on putting your plans out there for a couple different reasons. You don't want the competitors to steal the plan, use the plan against you. But Napoleon lost the primary by 20 percentage points. I think had the COP plan come out earlier, had the neighborhood plan come out earlier, had he done something other than say, Detroit is my home, not my hobby, I think it would have been a lot closer of a race.
Right, because Mike Duggan talked about the medical center.
He was the turnaround guy. And what Mike did was able to create his own narrative. And the media bought it, and obviously enough voters bought it. He defined himself. Benny Napoleon didn't define Mike Duggan, and so that helped
what it kind of reminded me of was Rudy Giuliani
in New York.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
He would say a noun and a verb in 9/11. It was like a noun and a verb in DMC.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about it, if you think about it, if for those that live in the metropolitan Detroit area, I mean, the Detroit Medical Center, at least for the last 10 years, they really have run almost continuously a major media campaign. I mean, everybody knows the Four Tops "I'll Be There" theme song that goes along with the DMC messaging. I mean, they have been
30-minute wait time.
The 30-minute wait time. Mike Duggan was able to transfer all that good energy, and if you will, into the mayoral campaign. The other thing is, and I don't think this has been said enough, Mike Duggan started a calendar year ago. Mike Duggan was having meetings in people's living rooms and in their basements when Benny Napoleon was leading the effort in Michigan to get Barack Obama reelected. And that did two things, getting out there early. It built credibility in a community where some people were skeptical. And it did something that we call in PR, it created earned media, meaning people were reporting on the fact that he was going to these meetings, and they did that for several months, obviously, and I think that helped Mike.
Wow. So he won by 10 percentage points, which ended up, I have the final vote count here. He had 74,254. And Benny Napoleon, 60,000.
Yeah.
448.
Yeah, so about 14,000 votes, which a lot of people will tell you, that it sounds like a lot, but 14,000 votes over the court, in an environment where you've got 500,000 registered voters, that was a winnable race. I mean, it was a winnable race for Benny Napoleon, even despite all of the money that Mike Duggan raised and spent. I just think that the Napoleon campaign did not run a very good campaign. I think Mike Duggan ran a far better one.
Who was the campaign manager
For
Benny Napoleon?
Eddie McDonald, who is it's a small fraternity of men and women who work at that level and run campaigns. Eddie's a winner, has been a winner in many occasions, but the candidate has to want it, the team has to want it, and in some ways, certainly before the primary, Benny Napoleon's campaign reminded me of Gil Hill's campaign in 2001. What I mean by that is I think that other people wanted it more for Benny than Benny wanted it for himself. I just didn't see the energy when I was in his presence that it was something that he wanted to win. When you saw Mike, and it's really Mike's demeanor for people that have known him for years, I mean, Mike is very methodical, very, very tactical, and goes at it and has energy and vigor when he does it.
Okay, let's look at city clerk.
Yeah, city clerk, really no surprises there. Janice Winfrey was reelected. I think she scored about 70% of the vote. And in political terms, that's a landslide. She was reelected as Detroit clerk.
It was 91,595 to 35,000 for Deetta Wilcoxon, 35,263, 72% to 28%.
It's very hard to beat a sitting clerk, right? And the clerk has his or her face on billboards throughout the year, encouraging people to vote. They have signage, every on the boulevard, the big sign at the election commission says the clerk's name, Janice Winfrey. There's a lot of sort of signage out there for the clerk all year round, and it's very difficult to beat a sitting clerk. And although Janice Winfrey did do it 8 years ago.
Yes, she did.
She did,
and you had mentioned that to me weeks ago.
Yeah.
So what do you think halted?
Well, I think that Ms. Wilcoxon just didn't have the resources to be able to wage a real credible race against Janice Winfrey. If for those that read the Free Press endorsement of Janice Winfrey, it was almost an indictment. It was almost an editorial for Deetta Wilcoxon. I mean, that's how winnable I think it could have been for somebody to beat the clerk had they had the resources and some name ID.
Okay, let's look at the city council races. Let's look at the what do you call them? The
At large?
At large,
citywide.
right. To citywide, Brenda Jones and Santel Jenkins.
No real surprise there. They're the two incumbents. They had more resources than Mr. McAllister and Reverend Bullock, and they did very well. And what the interesting thing about the tally there is that Brenda Jones, by only a handful of votes, secured more votes than Santel Jenkins, who's currently the city council president. So it'll be interesting to see now city council members vote for their own president as opposed to the top vote getter being president.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see which one of those two ladies, or if there's another new city council member who can galvanize 4 or 5 people with them and become the president.
Wow. That should be very, very interesting.
I'll just leave you with this. It's not a foregone conclusion that the president and pro tem will be the citywide or at-large members. It's likely, but not impossible, that one of the district members could be president or pro tem if they can get other people to vote with them.
Very, very interesting. Let's look at District 1.
District 1, what we saw there, real no surprise, incumbent James Tate beat Wanda Jan Hill. If you are ever in Northwest Detroit and Grandmont, Rosedale, James Tate lawn signs were all over that community as early as the spring. And I think Councilman Tate started doing something that was very helpful to him, having really district meetings as early as last year, maybe even 2 years ago.
He started that early?
Yeah, and he's been very skilled at doing that. He was fortunate enough to be the only sitting city council member that lived in that new geographic area. So he pretty much has known for 2 years that, you know, if he wanted to run for re-election and he didn't want to run citywide, that he knew the geography, and I think he worked it well. So he scored a huge victory there.
Okay. District 2, George Cushenberry and Richard Bowers Jr.
Yes, this one was a little bit of a race. I thought it might be closer. George Cushenberry is a former Wayne County commissioner. George Cushenberry, many people don't know, or some people may not remember, George Cushenberry, at the time when he was elected in 1975, I believe, was the youngest person in the history of Michigan to be elected to the House of Representatives, I think at 21 years old. So Cush has been in the business for 40 years.
Yeah, I heard that he really didn't campaign that much.
That's what I hear. I didn't spend a lot of time in that Northwest Detroit district. I did see him on, doing radio and the like. Bowers clearly worked the district committee very hard, but Cush has an established name. At parts of that district, Cush has been elected in that district for 40 years.
And he's had that campaign slogan, "Push for Cush."
Yep. Doesn't even have to change the lawn signs and the
I
stickers.
wonder how that's going to work out on city council, though. Personally, I wonder how that's going to work out on city council with his personality.
Cush becomes the senior citizen, if you will, of council. Council's a lot younger now.
It is.
The average age
really,
is about 40.
really is. And I hope that, he has a powerful personality, and I hope that everybody else exerts their power also.
Yep.
Let's look at the next district.
That's 3.
3.
And in District 3, Scott Benson beat Francine Adams. No real surprise there. Scott Benson got a lot of the endorsements. Scott Benson narrowly lost a race for state rep 2 years ago in some of that same area, some of that same terrain.
What area is that?
Northeast Detroit.
Okay.
And the great thing, I'm a former charter revision commissioner, and so the Benson win and District 7, we'll talk about a little bit later, I was really, really pleased to see now that we'll have somebody who actually lives in Northeast Detroit representing city council, something that only has happened a handful of times in a couple hundred years of city history.
Really?
Yeah. Lonnie Bates was the last person to reside in Northeast Detroit, and he really sort of resided in the city airport area. So, that sort of 94 Connor area. Scott Benson is more true Northeast Detroit, and he scored a sizable win. A win is a win, but he beat Francine Adams with 63% of the vote.
Right, 64 right
64.
here on mine.
Okay.
And then we have District 4, Andre Spivey and Betty Cook Scott.
Yep. Andre Spivey, incumbent, really not surprising, although Betty Cook Scott is a former state rep and has represented part of that area as a state House member. Spivey is an incumbent. Probably outspent her in terms of his fundraising, and he returns. And actually, right now, he's the city council pro tem, which is the number 2 spot in city council. That might have helped him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now we have the 5th district, which was hotly contended by Mary Sheffield. She won that.
Mary Sheffield won actually by a wider margin than I would have thought. That is my home district. I live in that area. I live in Elmwood Park, and Elmwood Park, Lafayette Park. That district also has Boston Edison and some other areas.
It's a big district.
Big district. All of them are bigger than what people really realize. But Sheffield, strong family name, UAW backed. The UAW did a mailer for her, an absentee mailer for her. The Chamber of Commerce did an absentee mailer for Adam Ollier. And so, in a sense, it was sort of the labor versus management. Although I imagine both candidates would probably say that that's an overgeneralization.
So, you have any other feelings on that race?
Well,
I thought Adam Ollier, he did publicized a lot too. I just thought it would be even tighter than
I was surprised that it wasn't as tight. Quite frankly, I thought we might still be counting votes on that one. Mary, Mary's on radio, was on radio most of the campaign season, but then
well, not really. She
Okay,
got off.
she got off early?
She
Okay.
she got off for a while.
Okay.
She and I both share the same birthday,
gotcha.
June 9th.
Okay, all right.
Gemini.
But I do think, I mean, she did obviously would have to get off air once the filing was on. But I think the point that I'm making is her dad certainly talked a lot about her on his show. So
Okay.
whether she was on or not, but I want to give credit where credit is due. I mean, that was probably a factor. But I saw Mary out a lot.
She worked hard too.
I saw Adam
Both
out a lot.
of them
Yep.
worked very, very
They
hard.
they door knocked. I got visits, at my home, and so it is a very complex district. Lafayette Park and Elmwood Park are high voting turnout districts, areas of the district, but it also has some areas that are very challenged economically. The North End, to be sure, and so it was great to see in this regard. No matter what candidate won, you would have the youngest city council member in the history of Detroit.
And Mary's just 26.
Just 26. Adams, I think, just turned 27 or 28.
28. He just turned 28. So,
And so it was.
hopefully he still stays involved with politics.
Yeah, well, Adam is the liaison, city council liaison with Mayor Bing now, and obviously that administration will change. But I've got a feeling that the star, Adam's a star. A political star, and he'll be back in some form or capacity.
Okay, let's look at the 6th district.
6th district was a very interesting one.
It was a historical race too.
Very, very much so. And one of the great things again about going to a district system is now you had an opportunity for other communities to be represented both ethnically and geography-wise. And Raquel Constanita Lopez won over Isaac Robinson. She becomes the first Latina member of the Detroit City Council, and I think that's a huge thing.
So what do you think? She campaigned harder or had a different message?
Yeah.
Or what?
She comes out of the Steve Tabachman, Rashida Tlaib tree, which and those two are tremendous campaigners, tremendous political organizers. And she was actually campaign manager, I believe, for Rashida Tlaib in one of her previous runs for state rep. And you kind of cut her teeth there. She's another young one. She's 32. I think she has her MSW, master's degree in social work.
Right.
Very much committed to community organizing, and she outworked somebody who I will give a lot of credit to, Isaac Robinson, who is generally known as a tremendous campaigner. She beat him by a pretty sizable margin.
Right. Now, District 7, there's a recount going on there.
Has that been? Because I was waiting.
Just read it.
Okay,
I just
good.
read it that
Okay.
it's going to be a recount.
Okay.
That was Gabe Leland who won over John Bennett.
By only 50 votes, and so
Only 50.
I would have been surprised if John Bennett had not asked for a recount with a margin that close. Here's the interesting thing. I want to make this point about District 7, and it's about District 7, but it's an overall sort of political perspective, and I'll do it quickly. One of the ways to win elections in Detroit is certainly by securing a majority, the absentee votes, right? Absentee votes, as I pointed out earlier, about 30 to 40% of the total vote tally in Detroit in most elections. Here's an interesting tidbit. John Bennett beat Gabe Leland by about 500 votes at the poll site on election day. More than 500 people. 500 people showed up. John Bennett got more than 500 people show up than Gabe Leland at the polls. However, Gabe Leland got 600 more votes in the absentees. So that gave him the margin of victory.
Okay.
And it's a lesson to be learned, I think. And I've always said this to clients when I've been a political consultant. You really have to pay attention to the absentee votes. They can make or break an election.
I agree with that.
Don't worry. You certainly want to worry about election day and your get out the vote effort. But if you don't get to the AVs in the period in which you need to, you can lose the election on election day. And we obviously will see a recount here, so it's not official until the Board of Canvassers have said so. But if John Bennett does lose this race, it will be clearly because he did not do as well as Gabe Leland in the absentee votes.
And so we have a kind of diverse city council coming
Very
together.
much. You have one white American, Jewish American. Actually, is Gabe Leland is a Latino member, and Ms. Lopez, and African Americans. The other 7 are African Americans.
Yeah, and then the youngest person.
Youngest person is Mary Sheffield at 26, and really a majority of the council members are under 40 now,
I know.
which is
Gosh,
interesting.
That's different than the
Makes
old
me
days.
makes me an old man now with gray hair. It used to be a time when all the
that
council members.
Grecian formula.
I know.
Let's go quickly through the police commission,
Yeah.
if you'd like. Willie Bell won over Henry Williams.
Yeah, no real
Jr.
no real surprise there. We saw, well, first of all, there are a couple different things. There's some write-in districts where we don't know really who the winner is going to be yet, but there were 4 contested races, actually 5 contested races. Wendell Bird wins, Reggie Crawford, and well, let me start at the top. District 1, we're still waiting to see what we get in terms of the write-in there. District 2, Wendell Bird wins in a write-in. He was on the ballot. District 3, Reginald Crawford wins. District 4, Willie E. Bell is the winner there. District 5, this was a competitive race between Willie Burton and Marcellus Bryce. Willie Burton won that district. That's District 5, so Willie Burton will represent District 5 on the police commission. And District 6, it's a write-in situation, so we'll have to wait and see who got the most write-ins there. And then finally, in District 7, that was another competitive race, a contested race. Ricardo Moore, who's a former communication specialist with the Detroit Police Department, beat Tawana Morris in District 7.
Wow, I'm not even sure. We have a phone call. We have to take some phone calls real quick
Okay.
before we get to our other guests. First caller, Morris. Good morning.
Brenda?
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good morning, and I'm enjoying your program.
Thank you.
Morning.
Yes, I'd just like to quickly say, what happened in our primary election is what produced what we have in our general elections. In the primary elections, we had voter fraud, massive voter fraud, where many of us, proud Detroiters, it was a handful of us, but we cared enough to go down there, and we saw to where these people have written Mike Duggan's name in there with the same signature over and over and over and over. And we saw so much of it had become sickening. And for all of our truths that we found, those truths was contradicted by our Board of Canvassers, who should be ashamed of themselves. In the general elections, now we have a absentee ballot cover-up to where the challenges were thrown out of the Cobo room to where they were counting those absentee ballots. Voter fraud in our absentee ballots is 70%. In my closing, I'm just saying that in the 05 primaries of the absentee ballots, some 70% to 75% of the absentee ballots were a plague of voter fraud. In the 09 primaries, by way of our absentee ballots in the general election, they threw out those 60,000 absentee ballots disenfranchising our Detroit voters. So my question for you, King Coleman, is since you're so intelligent and you know so much, and you sat on that charter commission 6 years too early, before 2018, what are your facts and findings of what I'm telling you about voter fraud by way of these absentee ballots, and as well as at the polls, but we're talking about the absentee ballots in particular now. With your intelligence and know-it-all, what are your findings on what I just
Okay,
presented
we're
to you
not
this
going
morning?
to
Thank you so much.
abuse my guest.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Morris and I have disagreed quite a bit over the last 10 or 12 years. I will say this. There were federal monitors in for the Detroit election on Tuesday, precisely to speak to some of the concerns that Morris and others have had about fraud allegations, not only in the primary this year, but in the 09 election and the 05 election. And so if there is a massive fraud that, as Morris charges, the feds and the state will uncover it. My personal view on this is I think that conspiracy theories, in Detroit elections are something that go way back. They're old as the Jerry curl. But I think the reality is that the numbers that we saw on Tuesday, in most cases, except for the district race that we were talking about with Leland and Bennett, are pretty sizable wins for the winners, and I don't think they'll be overturned.
Okay, we have another quick question, and Ken will be back this afternoon at 1 o'clock, so you could call and call again. Okay, Tom.
Yeah, good morning to both of you.
Quickly, Tom,
Okay,
very quickly.
You know what? I knew the four incumbents were going to get back in because when you look at the numbers coming out of the primary, that was too big a hill for, their opponents to overcome. And also the police commissioner's race, in terms of the write-ins, they will be, according to what I heard when I called down to the clerk's office, they said, or the election commission, they said that those will be certified today because of the they were write-in, and, had to be hand-counted or whatever.
That's good to hear.
That's great, Tom. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, we will continue this conversation
In a
this
few hours.
afternoon on Table Talk at 1 o'clock because basically we're going to end up talking about just probably three things this afternoon because there's so much to say on everything. So I will see you at 1 o'clock.
Yep. I'm going to get some lunch or some brunch and be back at 1.
Okay,
Good to-
Ken, thank
good
you,
to see
thank you. So we will talk more in depth, and we will have Robert Thomas, who is also on the zoning commission. I mean, this should be really interesting.
Yep. Tune in at 1.
At 1 o'clock. We'll be right back in just a moment with Because We're Men.
With Brenda.
On the horizon, and entertainment is going on here in Detroit on such a great level. And so I try to bring that to you. And this morning, I'm going to introduce first a friend of the show, Mr. Des Cortez Crenshaw, and who is an actor and writer and director and actor, Kamal Smith.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Good morning. Talking to the mic.
Good morning.
Yes,
Good morning.
projection has to be your life,
Absolutely.
I'd like to congratulate you on your television show. I watched it the other night on Channel 20.
Thank you.
I had seen some of it before. And I mentioned the laugh track to you. Anyway, I like it because I think it's funny without the laugh
Without
track.
the laugh track, yeah.
Yeah.
We get mixed opinions on that too.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, well, I'm knowledgeable of it. Anyway, so Kamal, how did you come up with this? How did you get the wherewithal and everything?
Yeah, actually, I came up with this back in 2009 off of a play we did. The name of the play was no, I'm sorry,
Rules to the
2007,
Game.
Rules of the Game, right? And it was kind of based on three men at the time who were best friends, who were knowledgeable in the game of dating and gaming.
And that is a game.
Yeah. So, my partners and I we kind of said, it was actually 2009 when we said maybe we should do a sitcom, and I kind of reached back in the vault and thought of some characters to spin off of, and we kind of came up with.
I like the idea that all the characters are different.
Yeah.
Because no 2 days are alike.
Right.
And first and foremost, I want to know a little about you. Where'd you go to high school?
Cass Tech.
Oh, Miss McCormick.
Miss MC. Yep.
Yes, my students and I brought a play over there to Cass a few years ago.
Okay.
This one I was still teaching, but
Yeah.
And did you go to college afterwards?
I went to Wilberforce University.
Oh, where really?
Yeah.
Such a historical
It
university.
is. It is. A lot of people don't know about it. Yeah.
And Des, tell the audience once again where you went to school.
I went to school, Highland Park School System, and then University of Detroit Jesuit High School.
So, how long have you known this gentleman?
2005.
Yeah.
So it's funny actually
Yeah.
because when we met on in rehearsal for a play where I just want to tell this quick story about you real quick. This brother right here. No, he came in as an understudy for a play, and needless to say, he outshined all of us, and they had to make him a character in the play. So he kind of made his own character in the play, and we just became brothers at that point, and we made a pact literally in 2005 downtown Detroit in a restaurant. Say, you know what, from here on out, whatever we do, we're gonna do it together.
Do together.
Yeah.
That is friendship.
Oh, yeah.
That's appreciation. That's what we have to do.
Absolutely.
So, Des, how do you enjoy working on the show?
I love it. I mean, it's just
Your character.
it's something that I could do every day, probably in my sleep. Especially, I love working with great actors, and then I love working with a great writer. Because I can just take it and I read it, and he gave me the script probably. Years. Even before we started, and I was just laughing reading it, and I knew if I was laughing reading it, that once we got in that studio or once we got in front of those cameras, that it was just gonna be great. So I love it.
It's three main men, right?
Yeah. Don Snipes is the other main character.
Right. Now, tell the audience a little about your character.
My character, I'm Maxwell. Actually, the very
You're the
first.
straight man.
Yeah, I'm kind of the straight and narrow guy who I was on my way to be married, and the very first episode I get dumped. So the whole season doesn't like focus on me getting dumped, but like my character kind of. I'm getting over her throughout the season.
Yes,
episode.
you could
Yeah.
tell. You know, you're so disenchanted with everything.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and Des, tell us about your character.
Oh man, Q is a crazy guy. You
I
know, he's
know.
he doesn't always think the way everyone else thinks. So he's, you would say he was more stupid would be a word that I can say, but he actually gives a lot of insight when you really dig down into
right.
it. So that's
Some
what I like
things,
too.
He seems somewhat oblivious.
Exactly. He's
And
very
then he'll
oblivious
come
to
out
what's
with
going
this
on.
jewel.
Yeah.
He'll come out with a jewel.
Yeah,
you know.
out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So tell us about the other character.
So Don Snipes is the ladies' man of the episode. I'm sorry, the
Now,
sitcom.
do you two get along? And your characters get along? Because
The characters, yeah. we're all-
because the other night it seemed like one didn't want to talk to him. He was on the couch.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
no,
that
what
was the
happened
one,
was,
yeah.
You know, I'm still spinning off of this whole getting over my fiance thing.
Right.
He's trying to set up some
Speed
dirty
dating.
yeah,
Yeah,
like, you know,
yeah.
bring some girls over, and I'm just not. So basically,
Oh,
he
that
needed
was
me to be a
like-
wingman for these twins that were in town.
Right,
and
oh,
I
the
really
twins.
wasn't down for it. So I was like, "Well, tell Daz to do it or Q to do it." And
And
so he's
you know, he
mad
didn't
at
want
me.
Q to do it.
Right? Yeah. So basically, I left him hanging with the girls, and so then he got mad at me, whatever.
And so you had that kind of dating game contest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was-
yeah.
Just kind of play off the speed dating that people still do right now.
Well, you know, oh yeah, that's crazy. You know, but tell the audience how you got it to Channel 20.
So I know we were under brief time to get a short story. I'll just say for people who are trying to get involved and really start their own dream and things, just follow up. That's the big way I got to TV20. TV20, I met the president back in 2011. As you can see, the show didn't air until 2013. So that shows you I just kept persistent. Follow up, emails, calls. Hey. You know, I shot him the pilot that we shot in 2009. And I shot it to him back in 2011. I just stayed following up.
Tell our audience what a pilot is.
So a pilot is basically, you know, the show that you see every Sunday. Well, you better be watching every Sunday. On my TV 10 o'clock. You see the show. The pilot is actually just the treatment for it. It's just the rough draft of it. So you want to show your...
It's the test copy.
Exactly. You want to show your networks, hey, this is something that we have in store. You know, obviously you may not have the funding to shoot a full season or whatever, but you can, here's just a rough draft, the first draft test copy, if you will, of our idea. So
Yeah,
they
this
can
is
get
what
a
you
sense,
can expect.
Yeah, they can get a sense of what the show is about or whatever it may be is about, and say, okay, I like it or I don't like it.
Well, I like the fact that these men are somewhat professional in their job.
That was important to me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was
Very
important to me.
good, very
I
good.
wanted to make sure that, you know, we can be funny, but we can still portray young black professional men who
Absolutely.
you know how to handle their business and work in a corporate atmosphere and not be looked at as buffoonery all the time.
Right, and you're not catering to a stereotype.
Exactly.
And that's very important to me.
Absolutely.
That's why I invited you on.
I appreciate that.
I mean,
yeah.
that's real important to me. So, did you have to get your own commercials, or sponsors, or did they get the sponsors for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's
A
kind of
little
a
of both.
a halfway thing. I mean, we can bring in some, and they can bring in some. The real thing of this was just main so opportunity as far as exposure. Advertisement will probably come more so in season 2 for us.
So, where do you shoot?
Well, for this first season, we actually shot in a house in Southfield,
Right.
and we shot down at Radio 1 downtown Detroit for the office scenes. And then
At Maryland,
Monroe, we
on
shot
Monroe.
there also for the club type
scenes.
atmospheres, yeah.
Right, because the office scenes, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So it was a grind. I mean, we
Yeah.
had to make it happen. Honestly, for like 5 months, we couldn't find a location. I mean,
I do understand more
Yeah.
than you ever know.
yeah, I'm sure you do.
No, I do.
Yeah,
I
it was
seriously.
frustrating.
It's tough,
Like,
yeah.
man. So yeah.
So, what's in store for the characters? And wait a minute, I got to stop. 'Cause
Yeah.
you have Katie, and you
Yeah.
have some other people who
Yeah.
are very. Tell us about the supporting characters,
So
because we're going to interview two
of them coming up. So I'll let them introduce themselves. I'll get to the ones that aren't here today. Katie Matthews and Cynthia Criswell play our neighbors. And-
Sisters.
and their sisters, right? So, and that really was kind of a spinoff of the whole a Friends type of thing. I really love the fact on Friends that they had neighbors that they could just come to because you need that in comforting times.
You do.
You know what I mean? And I really want to have that friendship value and really instill the value of good friendship, wholesome friendship.
Right.
You know, and then, okay, so they're here. So then you have Kiana Evans, who is one of my employees.
Who plays Jackie.
Plays Jackie.
Isn't there one that's kind of sweet on you?
Yeah, she's here.
Yeah,
That's why I was
she's
going to let her
here.
introduce
Oh,
herself.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Lynette Patrick.
Kinda sweet.
Yeah, she's Lynette Patrick. She is she's just an outstanding actress. So you
Very
guys will meet
awesome.
in a second. But me and her also hit it off a long time ago, like right after me and Des met. And she's
met
just
her
an
in a play.
outstanding talent. Yeah,
Yeah.
a play that actually never
Never
went up. It never went up, and that's a whole nother story.
Well,
yeah.
but then we all have those.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
Guerrilla filmmaking, guerrilla.
Yeah.
I mean, starting off in a living
Oh,
room
yeah.
rehearsing, and then next thing,
Bottom of a church.
I
Yeah.
know. I mean,
Yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah.
But-
So listen, I'm really excited. Tell the audience once again where they could see your show, and then I'll have the other
My
two.
TV 20 at 10 o'clock every single Sunday. We need
Every
your support. We
Sunday.
need your viewership. Please, it's not just some buffoonery. It is really a well-written, well-directed, well-casted, authentic Detroit-based made sitcom.
Because we're men.
Yeah.
10 o'clock on Sunday evenings, and this intelligent young man right here, you won't see him. The body is on the show. But the mind
Our
isn't.
spirit.
Yeah. So we'll be back in just a moment with our other two characters.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Good morning again, and welcome once again to the Brenda Perryman Show right here on TV 33 WHPR. And we were talking to Kamal Smith and Des Cortez Crenshaw about the TV show Because We're Men. It's a great comedy on Sunday nights on TV 20 and at 10 o'clock. And we have two more characters from the show right now. We have Lynette Patrick and John Bell. Don't you have a nickname?
I do. It's J Bell, actually. That's
Yeah,
my stage
know.
name.
I know.
yeah.
And John J. Bell is a friend of the show. He's been on the show before a couple of years ago. So why don't you all tell me about your characters?
Once again, my name is Lynette Patrick. My character is Cynthia, very delusional. Like you said before, she is quite rather sweet on Maxwell, which is Kamal Smith. She would do any and everything to try to get his attention.
Everything? Anything?
Anything. I had a wonderful time. Wonderful time playing that character. It's so beyond who I am.
Yeah, because you don't be chasing, girl.
Right.
No, I don't.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Cass also.
Oh, most of my guests went to Cass
Yes.
all the time. And you were with Miss McCormick, too?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, you
yeah,
didn't
we-
act at Cass?
No, I was in science and arts, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got into acting
Yeah, curriculum.
later on.
So, did you, after high school, what did you do?
I went to Wayne State,
Oh,
and my major was electrical engineering.
wow.
Who would have thought?
Okay.
Yeah,
Who'd have thunk it?
who would have thunk it?
Okay, J. Bell, we know you didn't go to kindergarten even. No, I'm just J.
Okay,
Bell is
then.
a
Okay, all right.
talented actor, comedian, and I want to say congratulations on your recent marriage.
Thank you.
I'm excited. I love a man who makes commitments.
Yes. You'll be surprised how many other women do too. Beat them off with a stick. That's what I do. No, I'm playing. I love my wife, and it's a beautiful thing.
What's her
Once you-
name
Yes.
so we could shout her out?
Yes.
Her name is Peace. She's a poet from Detroit.
Oh,
and,
yeah, I've heard of Peace.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes. Clarita.
Yeah, she's
yeah.
a friend, Facebook friend, too.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. She's a dope poet, and it's wonderful to have somebody in your life that supports you, and you just find that God in, and it's a
And
wonderful
understands artist,
Yes,
being an
yes,
artist. I mean,
yes.
because that's something real different.
thing. Definitely.
So, tell me about your character.
My character is Rondell, and it's funny.
Rondell.
Yeah, Rondell is similar to me. Like, I'm probably the only one in the cast that is like I'm that dude that's probably got something for you at the job. Like, yo, man, you You need that tie rod? Pff, I got somebody that can get it for you.
You're that man, that go-to man.
I'm that, yeah.
Remember in Shawshank Redemption
Yeah.
how Morgan Freeman was the
Red.
man?
Yeah, he had all that stuff. It's just like that without the prison. Yeah. Without the prison.
Without the prison. So how have you both enjoyed working on the show?
It is actually beyond words. It's
Now,
it's
does
surreal.
Kamal direct too?
Yes.
And he directs and he writes.
Yes.
So what does he do? Run around the place all the time? Well, I'm a director now. Let me get behind the camera. Let me go.
Well, one time, like it was like when my man had called in, it was like a similar situation with Kamal. It's like, Kamal, I don't feel comfortable doing. He was like, then tell me how it's supposed to be if you smart, huh? No, I'm playing. No. You know, it's pretty like we know each other pretty good. Like the
chemistry.
The chemistry is
wonderful.
crazy because we've all worked together so much. So when Kamal pretty much directs us and giving us the script, we'll go through a run through and like you might want to change it up, do your hand, like it's real quick,
Right.
and we'll go into it, and it's amazing. It's still surreal to me. It's like it's still crazy to see yourself on TV every week, every Sunday at 10 o'clock on TV 20
Every
because
Sunday.
we're men.
So what about learning lines? Do you have a difficult time learning lines either?
You know what? I got kind of used to Kamal's writing, and no, I'm just kidding. No, you know what? It gets harder when you don't know the story. So it was a little easier once I read the script over and over and over again, and once I knew the story, and after a while, I started adding my own, little things, and it made it a whole lot easier. So, not so much.
And then, like you say, you all know each other, you're familiar with each other, you know how each other works, and then when you get in that rehearsal, just playing off of one another.
Yeah.
And that's more important. Chemistry.
Oh, I agree.
Chemistry, yeah. And the whole cast is so talented. So it makes it a whole lot
Yeah,
easier.
I worked with Katie in Cornerstone.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Wonderful talent.
She just
Wonderful.
got married.
I
Yes,
know
she
she
did.
did.
Yeah,
She went to Oak
congratulations.
Park
Shout out.
High.
Okay.
I knew,
I'm kind of upset you didn't ask what high school I went to.
What high school did you go to, Jay?
It's closed right
Nobody-
now. No, I was playing. I went to Crockett Technical High School.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, shout out. That's what we did. Votech took up photography.
So when did you find out you were funny?
Man, when I got kicked out of class, and I got kicked out of class, and it was on a joke, and it was like, okay. Well, then the teacher was like, okay, I'm gonna give you about 5 minutes,
That's good.
and if you funny, you can come back to class. I was like, okay. She gave me 5 minutes, and it was like I talked about her, but it was funny enough to get me back in class. So it was on from there, and I started actually writing for a friend of mine. We were 15 doing comedy, so I started writing for him. I was too nervous.
Is he still doing comedy?
No, I am. No, but I mean, it's just something that you have to really grind, man. If you do comedy
is
in Detroit,
the highest form of art
Man.
because you have to bank on people
Woo.
laughing.
Yeah.
and if you can make people laugh in the city of Detroit,
I
you
know.
doing it.
I
You
know.
doing it because everybody. I got an uncle that's funny. Like, okay, all right.
Everybody got somebody who
Man.
can do a stand-up routine or in their house. But I always challenge comedians to 5 minutes. I
Yeah.
say, give me 5 minutes right now, because what I want to do here on the station is do some comedy showcases
That would be
and
wonderful.
poetry showcases, because I'm a poet myself.
Okay. All
So that's just, always have something going. A lot of
Right.
things
And that's what
going
it's
on.
about. That's why we
Wonderful.
Detroiters got that mover and shaker mentality.
Yeah. I'll give myself a couple more years, then I'm really retired. I mean, because I've retired from this, that, and the
But
other
you
thing.
give back so much. I just want to
Yes.
say thank you so much for your show and what you do. I mean, if you don't know, Miss Perryman does so much that you would not believe. Like, and I want to say thank you for your
Yes.
encouraging words, always being there, uplifting.
Well, you got to, because a lot of times, and I got 1 minute, but a lot of times people don't give artists the support they need. And there's so much talent here in Detroit, don't you think?
I absolutely agree.
There's so much talent, and we have to give artists, because so many people are out there doing jobs they don't like.
Yeah.
Don't
Yes,
you agree?
I agree.
So I believe that you should do what you like always. I would never be a waitress.
Hey.
Okay.
What's your nightmare job?
Serving.
What is your nightmare job?
A garbage woman.
You could find some good stuff though.
I'm not picking through it. Sorry.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, because we're men, 10 o'clock on Sundays on Channel 20. It's a great show, and I'd like to compliment the cast and all of the cast, and Kamal Bell for his idea and everything. And as I told you, we have that book signing at Silver Fox Furs. Call in. You could call at 313-872-4260, and you can RSVP by the 10th. Silver Fox Furs, signing on the 17th. See you there. And, and of course, come back this afternoon at 1 o'clock, more election coverage and more. Bye.